Despite Dune Awakening's impressive launch, the endgame currently faces a number of issues both in PvE and PvP. Well, it looks like the developers are working to address those problems with sweeping changes to both playstyles. A recent blog from creative director Joel Bylos laid out their initial plans for changes, and today we'll go through all the important information about how they plan to fix Dune's endgame. Firstly, let's talk PvE. The major complaints here have been lack of endgame accessibility and general dissatisfaction with the Landsraad. Joel begins by saying that, unequivocally, the devs want PvE players to play the endgame and have access to that content, but not to force them into PvP. This has been a particular issue around the Deep Desert, which locks tier 6 Plastanium resources behind the very real risk of running into active PvP players who will just, frankly, blast you with rockets. For PvE players, the risk has not been worth the reward in that regard. The internal hope was that PvE players would form guilds and work to mitigate the risks of the Deep Desert, but they realised that this idea of the endgame loop hasn't really worked. Therefore, they'll be making some big changes to the Deep Desert itself. To that end, some areas of the Deep Desert will now be flagged as partial warfare, aka PvE. The deepest sections of the Deep Desert will remain PvP, high risk, high reward, but new segments will now be converted over to PvE. This means PvE players will be able to explore these zones, take on testing stations, and harvest tier 6 resources without the risk of player-to-player conflict. The endgame is still balanced around groups and guilds, so it will be grindy for solos, but you don't risk fights you're not looking for. However, Landsraad control points, shipwrecks and large spice fields in these regions will still be PvP zones, but by that it sounds like smaller spice blows might remain PvE. Secondly, the team also recognise that Thopters are exceptionally good for the Deep Desert, but they are planning more changes to make that zone better for ground battles and other vehicles. Thirdly, the Landsraad. The team defines this as an activity driver, as in it promotes various activities for players to partake in. That driver should work for everyone, PvE and PvP, offering things for you to do every day and every week. Joel acknowledges that many of the activities are quite simple with a lot of crafting and hand-ins, but that will change as the system evolves, as it is still in its earliest iteration. However, in the future, the Landsraad will be an umbrella for endgame activities. That includes dungeons and bosses that drop endgame loot, contracts, specialised delivery tasks that cannot be stockpiled, and if raids are ever added to the game, they will be integrated into the Landsraad too. The system is a framework for many different vehicles of activity. However, the team do recognise and are addressing some key flaws in the system, namely the inability to hand in items after a square has been completed, and just how fast those squares are being completed. The Landsraad currently rewards stockpiling, but that is not the intention, and they'll make changes to address that. Furthermore, the team also know that the rewards aren't exactly in the right place, and the system will be updated to provide micro rewards for solo and small group players, making the system more rewarding for those choosing to play with a disadvantage. It isn't mentioned here, but this does go along with the recent developer Q&A, where they said they changed the Landsraad so that small groups and solos can work towards large rewards over time, allowing contributions to stack week after week. The Landsraad currently is dominated by guilds. That was kind of always going to be the case, but it is exceedingly hard for solos or small groups to glean any meaningful reward from participation, and even medium-sized guilds can struggle as things just get finished far too fast. These changes should help with both aspects. So, in a nutshell, part of the Deep Desert will now become PvE to allow PvE players to access more endgame content, the desert will be improved to allow more ground vehicle traversal, and the Landsraad will be updated to include a better variety of content to negate stockpiling, and to offer more rewards to solo or small group players. Now onto PvP. There's been a fair few issues here, but a lot of it has centred around just how powerful Scout Ornithopters are, and frustration with respawn and various other mechanics. Firstly, the Scout Ornies. These have just been too powerful with the rocket pods, so a series of changes will be made to address that, and they are as follows. Scout Ornithopters with rocket launchers attached will have their speed manoeuvrability reduced. Rockets fired from a Scout Ornithopter will have increased heat generation. Thrusters will provide a max speed bonus regardless of wings, ensuring that the thruster-equipped Scouts will be the fastest vehicles in the game, and a new Tier 5 infantry rocket launcher will be added to help improve the dynamics of vehicle-to-ground combat. The intention here seems to be to nerf down the Scout Ornithopter and make players choose how they wish to use it. If you want to be nimble and agile, you'll choose to outfit your Thopter with a thruster. If you want to be more combat proficient, you'll use rocket pods, but you'll also be able to fire off less than before, and you will have to sacrifice maneuverability for offensive firepower. Finally, a new rocket launcher gives foot soldiers the potential to fight back against an Ornithopter, and with the nerfs to maneuverability, it will likely be easier to fend off an enemy trying to get your loot. Lastly, the team says there are additional changes to respawn timers, vehicle storage tools, hand scanners, and other mechanics that are being abused in the deep desert. These have been fairly large complaints, especially VBTs and respawns. There's no word on exactly how these changes will manifest, but we'll likely find out more as we get closer to these changes being implemented. The team's overall vision here is that unless you really mess up, you should always have the option to retreat. If you're smart and vigilant, you should be able to avoid fights, but if you choose to do that, you should have to abandon whatever task you're doing if necessary. PvP fights should happen when both parties decide they want to fight. Obviously, vision is only half of the equation, but it seems the dev team want to push PvP closer to that idea, giving both attackers and defenders options. All in all, PvP is getting a series of adjustments. Scout Ornithopters with rocket pods are getting nerfed, whereas thrusters are getting a big buff to allow people to escape. Additionally, a new Tier 5 rocket launcher for infantry will give players another way to fight back against other attacking players. Future changes are coming to respawn timers, vehicle backup tools, hand scanners, and other mechanics, though no specific details on those adjustments yet. Overall, though Dune Awakening has had a rather spectacular launch and has had a lot of praise for its main game PvE experience, the endgame for both PvE and PvP has been a bit rough. It doesn't seem to have had much effect on Steam reviews or player counts too much right now, but it could grow into a real problem further down the line. Fortunately, it seems Funcom are taking steps to fix it, and especially the PvE changes look like a great option for us PvE enjoyers, just more to do in general. The PvP changes will remain to be seen. Hopefully the Ornithopter nerfs can stem that issue for now, with more changes coming to different mechanics in the future, but as with most games it will take a while to get that balance right. There has been a lot of debate about just removing rocket pods from Scout Ornithopters in general. I'm not a PvP player so I can't comment from personal experience, but if they're causing that much of an issue, that might be the right decision. As always, let me know your thoughts in the comments as a PvE or a PvP player for these changes, and if you want to see more of both Dune Awakening and Conan Exiles, make sure you subscribe so you never miss a video. A massive thanks to our wonderful esteemed coffee cultists for continuing to support the channel over on Patreon. If you want to see my content early, check us out on Patreon to support the channel directly, link in the description. Take care, and I'll see you soon.